Hello, welcome here. Have you ever found yourself standing at the precipice of your 30s, or perhaps well into them, looking back at the life you've built, and a quiet, unsettling question whispers in your ear? Despite all your achievements, your relationships, your carefully constructed independence, do you sometimes feel a deep, inexplicable anxiety, a sense of being trapped in a loop, repeating the same self-sabotaging patterns in love? Perhaps you've achieved external success, yet an inner emptiness persists, or a sudden disproportionate reaction to a minor setback leaves you reeling, wondering why you can't just get over it. Maybe it's the constant nagging feeling that you're not quite good enough, or the fear that the rug could be pulled out from under you at any moment, leaving you powerless. You might look at others who seem to navigate life with a quiet confidence and wonder. If any of this resonates, know this: you are not alone, and what you are experiencing might just be the quiet, insidious revenge of your unhealed childhood wounds, finally demanding your attention after decades of silent dormancy. They have been lying in wait, and now, after 30, they're stepping out of the shadows, ready to reclaim their influence over your present. But this isn't a sentence. It is an invitation to truly understand, to heal, and to finally live the life you deserve. Stick with me, and together we'll illuminate these hidden forces. If you find value in this conversation, consider hitting that like button and subscribing to the channel. It truly helps us bring more insights like these to a wider audience. Thank you. Now, many people mistakenly believe that childhood trauma, once experienced, either resolves itself with time or simply fades into the background, becoming a chapter they've closed. But the human psyche is far more complex than that. Think of your mind as a vast, intricate library. When a traumatic event occurs, especially in childhood when your emotional and cognitive systems are still developing, your brain doesn't just file it away. Instead, it might quarantine that experience, sealing it off behind a thick, invisible wall. This is a brilliant survival mechanism designed to protect the developing child from an overwhelming truth it cannot yet process. The adaptive child within you learns to cope, to dissociate, to develop strategies, some healthy, some not, just to get through the day, to maintain a This adaptive child grows into an adaptive young adult, often highly functional, even excelling in many areas of life. You might become a high achiever, a people pleaser, an intellectualizer, a fierce independent, or a master of emotional suppression. These strategies, born of necessity, served a vital purpose. They allowed you to survive, to navigate the often treacherous water. But here's the crucial part. After the age of 30, these very coping mechanisms that once saved you often begin to turn against you. Why 30? It is not a magical age, but rather a significant developmental threshold. By this point, many of us have established careers, formed serious relationships, perhaps started families, or are grappling with existential questions of purpose and legacy. The scaffolding of external goals and achievements that once held your focus starts to recede, and the internal landscape, long neglected, demands attention. The carefully constructed walls around those old wounds begin to crack under the pressure of adult responsibilities, deeper intimacy, and the inherent vulnerability that comes with building a truly authentic life. The problem then becomes, why do I feel so stuck or distressed now, when everything externally seems fine or even successful? The concept here is the latency of trauma. It's not that the trauma suddenly appears, it is that the protective mechanisms that kept it at bay are no longer sufficient, or they've become maladaptive in your adult life. The very strategies you learned to survive are now preventing you from thriving. Think of it like this: a child learns to avoid conflict at all costs, to prevent parental anger. As an adult, this translates into an inability to assert boundaries, leading to resentment and feeling exploited in relationships or at work. Or perhaps a child learned to be overly responsible, taking on adult roles prematurely. As an adult, this might manifest as chronic burnout, an inability. The analysis reveals that the brain and psyche didn't process the trauma fully at the time because they couldn't. Instead, they froze aspects of that experience, encoding emotional responses, bodily sensations, and limiting beliefs that operate largely outside of conscious awareness. These are often referred to as implicit memories. They're not explicit narratives you recall, but rather feelings, reactions, and physical sensations that emerge seemingly out of nowhere. You might experience a surge of panic when a partner goes quiet, echoing the fear of abandonment from a neglectful parent, or a wave of shame when you make a mistake, replicating the harsh criticism of a caregiver. Your nervous system, stuck in a past loop, responds as if the threat is still present, even when objectively it isn't. The application here is to begin a journey of conscious awareness. This means cultivating radical self-observation. When you feel that inexplicable anxiety, that sudden surge of anger, or that familiar wave of shame, pause. Don't just react. Ask yourself, what has happened? Does this feeling truly match the present situation? Or does it feel disproportionate, perhaps echoing something much older? Journaling can be an incredibly powerful tool here. Write down your reactions, your triggers, the patterns you notice. Begin to connect the dots between your adult dilemmas and potential echoes from your past. This isn't about blaming your past. It is about understanding how your past is. Recognize that these are not character flaws, but rather intelligent, albeit outdated, survival strategies. This self-awareness is the first crucial step in disarming the revenge of your childhood trauma. By shining a light on these hidden mechanisms, you begin to reclaim agency over your emotional life. Now, let's delve deeper into one of the most profound ways childhood trauma exerts its influence, through our attachment styles and the complex tapestry of our adult relationships. Many of you might find yourselves asking, why do my relationships always end up the same way? Or, why do I constantly attract partners who are unavailable or who I feel I need to fix? Perhaps you experience an overwhelming fear of intimacy, pushing away those who get too close, or conversely a desperate need for constant reassurance, feeling anxious and abandoned at the slightest sign of distance. These are not random occurrences. They are often direct reflections of your earliest experiences of bonding, codified into what psychologists call attachment styles. The problem of repeating painful relationship patterns. You might have tried everything: therapy, self-help books, dating apps, even just trying harder. Yet the same dysfunctional dynamics seem to resurface, leaving you feeling frustrated, heartbroken, or perpetually alone. This is where the concept of attachment theory becomes profoundly illuminating. Developed by John Bowlby and Mary Ainsworth, attachment theory posits that the way our primary caregivers responded to our needs in infancy and early childhood shapes our inner working models of relationships. These models dictate our expectations, behaviors, and emotional responses in all future intimate connections. Essentially, how you learn to connect and cope in your first relationships becomes the blueprint for all subsequent ones. There are generally four main attachment styles: secure, anxious, preoccupied, dismissive, avoidant, and fearful. Avoidant or disorganized. A secure attachment, forged in an environment of consistent, responsive care, leads to individuals who are comfortable with intimacy and independence, can regulate their emotions, and trust others. But what if your childhood wasn't consistently safe? The analysis shows us how the other, insecure styles develop. If your caregivers were inconsistent, sometimes there, sometimes not, sometimes warm, sometimes cold, you might develop an anxious, preoccupied style. As an adult, this often manifests as a deep-seated fear of abandonment, a constant need for reassurance, clinginess, and an oversensitivity to perceived slights or distance. You might idealize partners, then become consumed by worry that they'll leave, leading to a desperate cycle of pursuit and anxiety. Conversely, if your caregivers were consistently unresponsive, dismissive of your emotional needs, or even actively pushed you away, you might develop a dismissive, avoidant style. As an adult, you might pride yourself on your independence, feel uncomfortable with deep emotional intimacy, struggle to express vulnerability, and often subtly push partners away when things get too serious. You might intellectualize emotions or prioritize work over relationships, creating emotional distance as a protective barrier. The most complex is the fearful, avoidant, or disorganized style, often seen in individuals who experienced frightening or inconsistent care, such as abuse or severe neglect. They crave intimacy, but are also deeply terrified of it, leading to a push-pull dynamic where they approach, then retreat, often feeling confused and overwhelmed in relationships. This style can manifest as explosive arguments followed by profound remorse, or a struggle to trust others while simultaneously longing for connection. After 30, when many of us are seeking deeper commitment, perhaps marriage or starting families, these attachment patterns become glaringly obvious and profoundly impactful. An anxiously attached individual might constantly sabotage relationships with their neediness, while an avoidant person might struggle to commit, feeling suffocated by a partner's reasonable desire for closeness. The application here is multifaceted. First, identifying your own attachment style is paramount. There are numerous online quizzes and resources, but more importantly, observe your patterns. How do you react when your partner? What are your common relationship fears? Secondly, understand that attachment styles are not static. While formed early, they can be earned or changed through conscious effort, particularly in therapeutic relationships or with securely attached partners. This is called earned secure attachment. If you are anxiously attached, this might involve learning to self-soothe, trusting your partner's commitment, and giving. If you are avoidant, it might mean learning to lean into vulnerability, practicing emotional expression, and recognizing that intimacy doesn't equate to a loss of self. For those with a disorganized style, professional help from a trauma-informed therapist is often essential to process the underlying relational wounds. Finally, be mindful in your choice of partners. While the insecure styles often attract each other in a reenactment of old wounds, consciously seeking out a securely attached partner can provide a corrective emotional experience, helping to rewire your inner working model over time. This isn't about finding a perfect partner, but a willing one, someone who can offer stability and responsiveness while you do your own healing work. By understanding and actively working with your attachment style, you begin to break free from the cyclical pain of your past, paving the way for truly fulfilling and healthy relationships. Like this video, if you are finding these insights helpful, it is a small act that makes a big difference. Another insidious way childhood trauma exacts its toll after 30 is through the relentless voice of the inner critic. This is the part of you that constantly. The problem here is that despite achieving significant milestones, a successful career, a loving family, financial stability, you might still be plagued by a deep-seated sense of not being good enough, imposter syndrome, perfectionism, or an intense fear of failure or even success. You might sabotage your own efforts, dismiss compliments, or relentlessly compare yourself to others. This persistent self-doubt erodes your confidence, limits your potential, and steals your joy. The concept behind this inner critic is rooted in internalized criticism and core beliefs formed in childhood. When children are subjected to constant criticism, neglect, or unrealistic expectations from caregivers, they often internalize these messages. They literally adopt the critical. This isn't a conscious choice. It is a survival mechanism. If I am bad explains why I am being treated badly, then at least there is a reason, and a faint hope that if I just fix myself, I might earn love or safety. These internalized messages become your core beliefs about yourself, often operating beneath the surface of conscious thought. Beliefs like I am unworthy, I am a failure, The analysis reveals how these core beliefs dictate your choices and experiences after 30, often unconsciously. For example, if your core belief is I am unworthy, you might unconsciously choose jobs that are beneath your capabilities, accepting less pay or recognition than you deserve. You might avoid promotions or opportunities for visibility, fearing that your true inadequacy will be exposed. In relationships, you might tolerate poor treatment, believing it's all you deserve, or push away genuine love, convinced it is too good to be true and will inevitably be withdrawn. The perfectionist, driven by a childhood belief that I must be perfect to be accepted, might paralyze themselves with fear of making a mistake, leading to procrastination or an inability to complete projects. The imposter syndrome, where you feel like a fraud despite clear evidence of competence, stems from a belief that your achievements are not truly yours, or that you are fundamentally flawed and will eventually be discovered. These shoulds and musts, I should always be productive. I must never show weakness. I must always put others first, are the echoes of past demands. Now internalize these rules, once designed to protect you from external judgment, now serve to imprison you within your own mind, preventing you from embracing authenticity and genuine self-acceptance. The constant striving and never enough feeling keep you on a treadmill of dissatisfaction, perpetually seeking external validation that can never truly fill the void created by internal self-rejection. The application to dismantle the inner critic is a powerful journey of self-compassion and cognitive restructuring. First, recognize the inner critic as a separate entity, not your true self. When that critical voice speaks, say internally, "Ah, there is my inner critic again, trying to protect me in its own misguided way." This creates distance. Second, challenge its statements. Is what it's saying objectively true? Often, you'll find it's not your own voice, but a ghost from your past. Third, practice self-compassion. Instead of beating yourself up for a mistake, ask, "What would I say to a dear friend in this situation?" Offer yourself that same kindness, understanding, and encouragement. Fourth, intentionally affirm new, healthier beliefs. If the old belief is "I am unworthy," start gently affirming "I am worthy of love and respect." This isn't about instant belief, but about consistently redirecting your internal narrative. Fifth, celebrate small wins and acknowledge your efforts. The inner critic thrives on minimizing your accomplishments. Consciously acknowledge them. This process is not about silencing the inner critic entirely. It often has a protective function, however distorted, but about re-educating it, softening its tone, and replacing its harsh dictates with a voice of wisdom, kindness, and self-acceptance. It is about becoming your own benevolent inner parent, rather than an internal oppressor. By doing so, you reclaim your inherent worth and begin to act from a place of genuine self-value, rather than constantly striving for an approval you already possess. Let's talk about emotional regulation, or often the lack thereof, and how childhood trauma can leave you struggling with intense feelings long after you've crossed the threshold of 30. Have you ever felt an overwhelming surge of anger or sadness in response to a seemingly minor event, leaving you bewildered by the intensity of your own reaction? Perhaps you find yourself prone to anxiety attacks, or you simply numb out, feeling disconnected from your emotions and the world around you. Or maybe you struggle to tolerate any form of discomfort, constantly seeking escape or distraction. This problem of emotional dysregulation is a hallmark of unresolved trauma, manifesting as unpredictable emotional reactivity or, conversely, emotional flatness. The concept here is that healthy emotional regulation is learned in a nurturing childhood environment. Caregivers act as co-regulators. When a child is distressed, a calm, responsive parent helps them process their feelings, label them, and eventually develop strategies to self-soothe. They learn that emotions are signals, not threats, and that they can be experienced and moved through safely. When this co-regulation is absent, inconsistent, or actively undermined, for example, if a child's emotions are dismissed, punished, or mocked, the child doesn't develop a robust internal capacity to manage strong feelings. Instead, they might learn to suppress, explode, or dissociate. The analysis shows us how these early deficits manifest after 30. Your nervous system, having been repeatedly overwhelmed or neglected in childhood, never learned to return to a state of calm efficiently. Instead, it might remain in a perpetual state of hyperarousal fight, or flight, or hypoarousal freeze, or fawn. When triggered by a current event, however small, your system might react as if the original childhood threat is present. This is what Bessel van der Kolk famously refers to as the body keeps the score. Emotional flashbacks, a term coined by Pete Walker for complex trauma, describe sudden, intense re-experiencing of childhood feelings without a clear memory of the original event. You might suddenly feel the terror, shame, or despair of your younger self, completely disconnected from your adult reality, leading to panic attacks, severe anxiety, or profound, inexplicable sadness. Conversely, some might adopt extreme emotional suppression. They might pride themselves on being rational or unemotional, but this often leads to a numbing of all feelings, including joy and connection. The inability to tolerate discomfort can lead to addictive behaviors, substance abuse, compulsive shopping, excessive gaming, or even constantly busy work, all as a means to escape the internal landscape they were never taught to navigate. Your brain, having learned that intense emotions are dangerous, employs these strategies to avoid feeling, but this avoidance comes at a steep price. Authentic connection, genuine well-being, and the capacity for true intimacy. The application involves a journey of reparenting your emotional self. First, begin with mindfulness and grounding techniques. When you feel an intense emotion surge, instead of being swept away by it, try to anchor yourself in the present. Notice 5 things you can see, 4 things you... This helps bring your prefrontal cortex back online. Second, identify your triggers. What situations, words, or even internal sensations reliably set off your emotional responses? Understanding these can give you a precious moment of choice before reacting. Third, practice naming your emotions, moving from "I feel bad" to "I feel frustrated" or "I feel abandoned" helps to bring Fourth, cultivate self-soothing strategies that are genuinely healthy, deep breathing, progressive muscle relaxation, taking a warm bath, listening to calming music, going for a walk in nature. These teach your nervous system that you are now safe and can provide comfort for yourself. For individuals with more severe dysregulation or a history of complex trauma, seeking professional help from a trauma therapies like somatic experiencing, EMDRI movement, desensitization and reprocessing, or dialectical behavior therapy, DBT, are specifically designed to help individuals reprocess traumatic memories and develop healthy emotional regulation skills. Remember, your intense reactions are not a sign of weakness, but a sign that your body and mind are still trying to cope with an old By learning to gently respond to these signals and offering yourself the compassionate regulation you may have lacked, you can gradually rewire your nervous system, moving from a state of reactivity to one of resilience and calm. By giving this video a like, you help others find these crucial insights, and I'd be incredibly grateful. One of the most common and pervasive ways childhood trauma plays out in adulthood, particularly after 30, is through chronic boundary issues and a pervasive pattern of people pleasing. Have you ever felt constantly drained, taken advantage of, or resentful, yet found it almost impossible to say no to others' requests, even when they infringe upon your time, energy, or values? Do you struggle to assert your own needs, often prioritizing the comfort or desires of others over your own, only to feel a quiet desperation or anger simmering beneath the surface? This problem of porous boundaries and chronic people pleasing leaves you feeling like a doormat, unable to protect your own space and energy, and often leading to burnout, bitterness, and a profound loss of self. The concept at play here is the profound impact of early experiences on the development of a healthy sense of self and the ability to articulate and defend personal boundaries. In a healthy developmental environment, children learn that their needs matter, that their no is respected, and that it's okay to have preferences and limits separate from others. They learn that setting boundaries doesn't equate to rejection. However, if your childhood environment was one where your needs were consistently ignored, dismissed, or even punished, where expressing a no led to anger, withdrawal, or fear, or where love and acceptance were conditional upon always pleasing caregivers, then you likely learned that having boundaries was dangerous. You learned that your primary role was to keep others happy, to avoid conflict, and to anticipate. This often leads to the fawn response to trauma, where individuals try to placate and appease their way out of perceived danger. The analysis reveals how these patterns manifest after 30, creating significant disruption in your adult life. If you grew up believing that your worth was tied to your utility to others, or that saying no would lead to abandonment, you'll likely carry this into adult relationships. You might find yourself in one-sided friendships, romantic relationships where you constantly give and never receive, or professional situations where you are overworked and underappreciated. You become the yes person at work, taking on extra tasks until you're overwhelmed, or the fixer in your family, constantly solving everyone else's problems while your own languish. The fear of conflict is so intense that you would rather endure. The fear of abandonment is so profound that you'll sacrifice your own well-being to maintain a connection, however unhealthy. You might struggle to identify your own needs and desires because you've spent so long attuned to everyone else's. Your sense of self becomes porous, easily influenced and defined by external expectations rather than internal authenticity. This isn't about being inherently weak or nice. It is a deeply ingrained survival strategy that once protected you from perceived threats to your belonging or safety, but now actively prevents you from living a life of integrity and self-respect. The constant giving without receiving leads to resentment, bitterness, and a profound sense of exhaustion. You might also attract individuals who are comfortable with these dynamics, those who are happy to take advantage of your lack of boundaries, creating a self-fulfilling prophecy of being used and undervalued. The application involves a courageous journey of reclaiming your authentic self and asserting your inherent right to boundaries. First, begin by learning to identify your needs and desires. This often requires slowing down and tuning. What do you feel comfortable with? What are your limits? Second, understand that no is a complete sentence. You don't always need to offer lengthy explanations or justifications. Practice saying no in small, low-stakes situations. No, I can't help with that right now. No, that doesn't work for me. Third, recognize that setting boundaries might initially evoke discomfort, both in you and in others. This is not a sign that you are doing something wrong, but often a sign that you are doing something right. You are disrupting old, dysfunctional patterns. Fourth, understand that healthy boundaries are not about being selfish. They are about self-care and respect, which paradoxically allows for more authentic and sustainable giving. You cannot pour from an empty cup. Fifth, practice assertive communication. Express your needs and feelings clearly and respectfully using I statements. I feel overwhelmed when I take on extra tasks, or I need some quiet time for myself this evening. This is a process, not a single event. It requires patience, self-compassion, and a willingness to tolerate discomfort. With each small boundary you successfully set, you begin to rewire your nervous system, teaching yourself. This reclaims your energy, your time, and ultimately, your sense of self-worth. If this discussion is hitting home, please take a moment to subscribe. Your support allows us to continue bringing these important conversations to light. We often talk about trauma in terms of mental and emotional scars, but what if your body itself is holding the unhealed memories of your past? This brings us to a profound yet often overlooked aspect of childhood trauma's revenge, the somatic manifestations where the body keeps the score. Have you experienced chronic pain, unexplained fatigue, digestive issues, autoimmune flare-ups, or a pervasive sense of anxiety or tension held within your physical being despite medical tests coming back inconclusive? Perhaps you feel a deep discomfort in your own skin or an inability to relax, even in safe environments. This problem of persistent physical symptoms and bodily discomfort, often without a clear medical cause, can be deeply frustrating and debilitating, making you feel trapped within your own body. The concept here is that trauma isn't just a story in your mind, it is an experience encoded in your nervous system. And when a child experiences trauma, their body automatically activates survival responses: fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. If the child is unable to complete these actions, for instance, a child wanting to flee an abusive situation, but being physically unable to, that energy, that incomplete survival response, gets stuck in the body. It doesn't just disappear. Instead, it becomes a chronic state of heightened arousal or shutdown, living in your muscles, organs, and nervous system, subtly influencing your health and well-being decades later. Peter Levine's somatic experiencing and Stephen Porges's polyvagal theory provide profound insights into this. Polyvagal theory, for example, explains how the vagus nerve, which connects your brain to in a traumatic past, your nervous system learned to be hyper, vigilant sympathetic activation, fight-flight, or to shut down dorsal vagal freeze. These patterns persist, influencing your heart rate, digestion, breathing, and overall sense of safety in the world. The analysis reveals how these stored bodily memories can manifest after 30, often triggered by subtle cues that unconsciously remind your nervous system of past threats. Chronic muscle tension, especially in the neck, shoulders, and jaw, can be the physical manifestation of a constant fight response that was never completed. Persistent fatigue or a sense of brain fog might stem from a chronic freeze response. where your system is constantly conserving energy, ready to shut down to protect itself. Digestive issues like IBS, acid reflux, or ulcers are often linked to a nervous system that is perpetually in a state of stress, impacting gut motility and inflammation. Autoimmune conditions where the body mistakenly attacks itself can be understood as the body's self-directed fight response, turning inward when external threats were overwhelming and unresolvable. Even anxiety and panic attacks, while often perceived as mental, have profound somatic components: racing heart, shortness of breath, trembling, dizziness. These are the body's ancient alarm systems sounding off, not necessarily in response to a current danger, but to the unresolved echoes of a past one. Your body, in essence, becomes a living archive of your trauma, constantly reenacting the past, even when your conscious mind has moved on. The feeling of being out of sync with your body, or a deep discomfort in your own skin, is often the result of this stored unprocessed trauma, where the application involves a brave and gentle approach to befriending your body and releasing these stored energies. First, mindful movement practices like yoga, qigong, or gentle stretching can help you re-establish a connection with your body and allow for the release of tension. The key is to move with awareness, noticing sensations without judgment. Second, breathwork is incredibly slow, deep diaphragmatic breathing activates the ventral vagal system, signaling safety to your nervous system and gently guiding it out of fight, flight, or freeze. Explore techniques like box breathing or coherent breathing. Third, pendulation and titration, concepts from somatic experiencing, involve gently moving between states of comfort and discomfort, allowing small amounts of stored energy to release without becoming. For example, if you feel tension in your shoulders, focus on it for a moment, then shift your attention to a neutral or comfortable part of your body, then back again. Fourth, cultivating a sense of safety in your body through simple practices, like wrapping yourself in a warm blanket, listening to soothing sounds, or gently rocking, can help reparent your nervous system. Fifth, for deeper, more entrenched somatic issues, seeking out a qualified somatic experiencing practitioner or a trauma-informed body worker can be transformative. These professionals are trained to help you safely and gently discharge stored traumatic energy from your nervous system, allowing your body to finally complete its incomplete survival responses. By listening to your body, honoring its signals, and providing it with the safety and care it craved as a child, you can gradually transform your physical experience, moving from a state of chronic alarm to one of embodied peace and integration. This is a profound path to healing, and it begins with acknowledging that your body has a story to tell. Let's explore another profound dimension of how childhood trauma can seek its revenge after 30. Its impact on your sense of meaning, purpose, and even your encounter with existential dread. Perhaps you've achieved all the conventional markers of success: a good job, a stable home, a partner, yet you feel a pervasive sense of emptiness, a lack of fulfillment, or a gnawing question of, is this all there is? You might feel lost, struggling to find genuine joy or passion, or experience bouts of existential crisis, wondering about the point of it all, even when, by all accounts, you should be happy. This problem of a fractured sense of purpose and underlying existential dread can be deeply isolating, leaving you adrift in a world that often seems to demand a clear direction and a strong. The concept at its core is how early trauma can fragment identity and disrupt the natural development of a cohesive self, making it difficult to connect with an authentic sense of purpose later in life. In a safe and supportive childhood, individuals naturally explore their interests, values, and capabilities, gradually building a robust sense of who they are and what matters to them. They develop a capacity for. When trauma enters the picture, this developmental process is often severely interrupted. The child's focus shifts from self-exploration to survival. Identity becomes less about who am I and more about how do I stay safe or how do I get love. The self becomes fractured, split into parts. The adaptive child who copes, the wounded child who holds the pain, and perhaps a false. This prevents the organic integration needed to form a stable, resilient sense of self that can then bravely venture into the realm of meaning and purpose. The analysis reveals how this fractured foundation plays out after 30. precisely when many adults are expected to, or naturally begin to, seek deeper meaning, self-actualization, and a legacy beyond material success. If your identity was formed around survival, people-pleasing, you might have pursued a career path based on external validation or parental expectations, only to realize in your 30s that it leaves you cold and unfulfilled. The ability to connect with your true passions, values, and authentic desires is hampered by the layers of protection built around the wounded self. The fear of vulnerability, judgment, or failure, often rooted in traumatic experiences, existential dread. The feeling of meaninglessness in the face of life's inherent uncertainty and suffering can become amplified. Without a strong, integrated sense of self to anchor you, the vastness of existence can feel terrifying rather than inspiring. You might struggle with decision-making, feeling paralyzed by the multitude of choices, or constantly second-guess your path, lacking the internal compass that a clear sense of purpose. The capacity for joy and deep connection can be dampened, replaced by a sense of longing or a pervasive feeling that something fundamental is missing, even when outwardly everything seems fine. This isn't just a midlife crisis. It is the delayed consequence of a childhood where the freedom to explore, imagine, and dream was curtailed by the demands of survival. The application involves a deliberate and compassionate journey of identity integration and meaning. Making first. Engage in values clarification. What truly matters to you independent of what others expect? What are your core principles? Journal about these. This is the bedrock of purpose. Second, explore your authentic interests and passions, perhaps revisiting hobbies or curiosities you abandoned in childhood or adolescence. Allow yourself to play, create, and explore without the pressure of external outcome. This helps connect you back to your innate sense of curiosity and vitality. Third, practice inner child work. This involves connecting with and nurturing the wounded parts of yourself. Through visualization, journaling, or therapeutic guidance, offer your inner child the safety, validation, and encouragement it lacked. This helps integrate the fragmented parts of your identity, creating a more cohesive and resilient self. Fourth, find purpose-driven activities. This doesn't necessarily mean a grand career change. It can be volunteering, engaging in creative pursuits, or dedicating yourself to a cause that resonates with your values. Contributing to something larger than yourself can be a powerful antidote to existential dread. Fifth, engage in therapies like internal family systems. IFS can be particularly helpful in understanding and integrating the different parts of yourself, allowing your core self to emerge and lead. By courageously embarking on this journey of self-discovery and integration, you can move beyond the shadows of your past, reclaim your authentic identity, and consciously forge a life imbued with profound meaning, purpose, and genuine fulfillment. If this resonates with your personal journey, please consider sharing this video with someone who might also benefit from these insights. Let's now turn our attention to one of the most empowering aspects of healing from childhood trauma, the journey of breaking the cycle and conscious reparenting. After 30, as we mature, establish families, or simply gain a deeper understanding of ourselves, many of us become acutely aware of repeating patterns, not just in our own lives, but potentially in how we interact with the next generation, be it our own children, nieces, nephews, or even younger colleagues. The problem here is the gnawing fear that you might inadvertently pass on the very pain and dysfunction you experienced as a child. You might observe yourself reacting to your children or loved ones in ways that mirror your own caregivers, or you might find yourself withdrawing just as your parents did. The thought of perpetuating the cycle of trauma can be terrifying, leaving you feeling helpless and guilty, despite your conscious desire to do things differently. The concept behind breaking the cycle is a profound act of conscious intervention and repair. It acknowledges that you are not doomed to repeat the past. While you cannot change what happened to you, you absolutely have the power to change how you respond to it, and crucially, how you choose to show up in the world today. Reparenting involves becoming the good enough parent to yourself that you may not have had. It's an active, compassionate process of providing your inner child with the unconditional love, validation, protection. This isn't about blaming your actual parents, but about taking responsibility for your own healing and well-being. The analysis reveals how trauma, if left unaddressed, operates on an unconscious level, compelling us to reenact familiar dynamics. If you experienced neglect, you might unconsciously neglect your own needs or withdraw from your children when overwhelmed. If you were subjected to harsh criticism, you might find yourself speaking to yourself, or even to others, with an unyielding critical voice. These are not moral failures, but learned responses that play out automatically. After 30, with greater self-awareness and often the added responsibility of caring for others, these patterns become more visible and more painful. The desire to protect your own children from breaking the cycle means actively interrupting these automatic trauma-driven reactions. It requires bringing the unconscious into conscious awareness. It means identifying the triggers that activate your wounded child self and then consciously choosing a different response. For example, if a child's tantrum triggers a surge of your own childhood helplessness and frustration, instead of reacting from that place, you learn to pause, regulate your own nervous system, and then respond from your adult, resourced self. Conscious parenting in this context is not about being perfect, but about being present, attuned, and intentional. It's about acknowledging your own triggers, repairing ruptures when they occur, and modeling healthy emotional regulation and boundary, setting for those around you. It's about being compassionate with your imperfections, understanding that healing is a journey, not a destination. The application involves several practical steps for breaking the cycle and reparenting. First, deepen your inner child work. This can be visualize your inner child, listen to its needs, and offer it comfort, safety, and love. Ask, what did this part of me need then, and what does it need from me now? Second, cultivate self-compassion. Understand that your past behaviors were survival strategies. Forgive yourself for moments when you reacted from a place of unhealed pain. You are doing the best you can with the tools you have, and you are actively ask, is this truly happening now, or is this an echo of the past? This gives you a crucial moment of choice. Fourth, seek therapeutic guidance for complex trauma. Therapies like EMDR, somatic experiencing, or internal family systems, IFS, are designed to help you process and integrate past trauma, allowing you to respond from a place of calm and conscious choice rather than reactive pain. Understanding how children's brains and emotions develop can provide a roadmap for conscious parenting, even if you're only applying it to your inner child. Finally, remember that breaking the cycle is an ongoing act of love, love for yourself, love for your present relationships, and love for future generations. It is a legacy of healing, resilience, and conscious connection. By undertaking this sacred work, you not only liberate yourself from this journey is profound and challenging, but it is also deeply rewarding. Now, let's consider the ultimate act of reclaiming your power from childhood trauma, the power of narrative. Many of you might feel defined by your past, trapped in a story where you are the victim, or where your life is a series of broken pieces that don't quite fit. The problem here is a sense of helplessness, a fractured life story, and a feeling that your trauma. This can lead to a pervasive sense of being stuck, unable to move forward, and unable to imagine a future that isn't overshadowed by your past. The concept at play is the transformative potential of narrative therapy and post-traumatic growth. Narrative therapy suggests that our lives are shaped by the stories we tell ourselves and others. When we experience trauma, we often adopt a trauma narrative that emphasizes our brokenness, our helplessness, and the perpetrator's power. Healing involves externalizing this narrative, recognizing that the trauma is an event that happened to you, not an inherent part of who you are, and then consciously reauthoring your story. Post-traumatic growth, PTG, goes a step further, positing that individuals can experience positive psychological changes as a result of struggling with highly challenging life circumstances. It is not about being grateful for trauma, but about recognizing the strength, wisdom, and new perspectives that can emerge from navigating profound adversity. The analysis reveals how, without conscious effort, the trauma, if you continuously tell yourself, I am a victim of my past, or I'll never escape this pattern, your subconscious mind will work to confirm that story. This can lead to choices that inadvertently perpetuate the trauma's influence, reinforcing a sense of helplessness and keeping you locked in familiar, albeit painful, dynamics. The fractured nature of the trauma narrative often means that the traumatic events are isolated, unprocessed, and emotionally charged, preventing them from being integrated into a coherent life story. This creates emotional hotspots that can be easily triggered, leading to emotional flashbacks or dysregulation. Reclaiming your narrative means moving from being a passive recipient of your story to becoming its active one. It involves integrating the traumatic experiences into a larger, more comprehensive understanding of your life, one that includes your resilience, your wisdom, your growth, and your capacity for joy. It means understanding that the trauma is a chapter, not the entire book. It acknowledges the pain and the loss, but also highlights the journey of survival, the courage it took to endure, and the profound lessons learned. This shift in perspective is not about minimizing the trauma or pretending it didn't happen. It is about shifting your identity from traumatized person to person who experienced trauma and emerged stronger, wiser, and more compassionate. It is about recognizing that your capacity for empathy, your resilience, and your depth of understanding can often be profound gifts born from your challenging experiences. The application for reclaiming your narrative is a powerful, active process. First, engage in therapeutic storytelling. This might be through writing your story, sharing it with a trusted therapist or support group, or even through creative expression like art or music. The act of externalizing the narrative helps you gain perspective and distance. Second, identify moments of resilience and strength within your story, even during. Focus on these sparkling moments or unique outcomes that often get overlooked in a dominant trauma narrative. Third, consciously reframe your experiences. Instead of saying, "My childhood ruined me," you might say, "My childhood presented immense challenges, and I developed incredible strength and compassion as a result." This is not about toxic positivity, but about acknowledging the full spectrum of your experience. Identify specific areas where you have grown since the trauma. Has it led to a greater appreciation for life? A deeper sense of connection with others? New possibilities in your life? Enhanced personal strength? A spiritual development? Fifth, create a future narrative. What kind of person do you want to be? What kind of life do you want to live? Begin to visualize and articulate this future, allowing it to pull you forward. It transforms your past from a burden into a source of wisdom, your pain into purpose, and your identity from victim to survivor, and ultimately to thriver. You are not defined by what happened to you. You are defined by how you choose to respond, how you choose to heal, and the new story you choose to live. This is the ultimate act of revenge against your trauma. Not by fighting it, but by transforming it into. If you've stayed with me through this entire journey, you are clearly someone committed to deep understanding and personal growth. Thank you. I hope today's sharing provides you with a new perspective on the world and a renewed sense of hope for your own healing journey. Remember, you have the power to break free from the invisible chains of your past and build a life filled with meaning, connection, and joy. Thank you for watching.